Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Beyond the Contract. I'm so excited to be here today, and we are going to talk about some really interesting news in real estate, our community, and so much more. Today, we are joined by Brian Larson. He is the president-elect of the Realtors Association of Metropolitan Pittsburgh, my friend, and a great support person that we've had
Oh,
on the board. And so welcome here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
of course, Michelle. It's my pleasure. I'm so excited to
Yes,
be here.
it's so great to talk to you. You have been really busy.
I
We
have
all
been.
have,
Yes,
yes.
it's been a busy time.
It really is. So excited for you as you look to 2027 to step into your role as president.
Yeah, it still hasn't quite hit me that I will be taking over the presidency of such an incredible organization. I've
Yeah.
been training these last couple of years in the different roles, and I'm ready to tackle it. But it just quite hasn't hit the forefront
Hasn't
just
hit.
yet.
Yes. Well, it will, and it will continue to go very fast. A year goes fast. But as I was talking with Dale before, it's so many years before and so many years after that we're committed to our roles and work at the association.
Oh, absolutely. And the team that we work with is just unbelievable.
We are very lucky. We are very lucky to have such a great group that, again, will continue on the like-minded mission that we have to serve our members and serve our Pittsburgh consumers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, with so much going on, what are you most excited about with your role at the association?
Yeah. So 2027 is going to be a big year for me, both professionally and personally.
Yeah.
We'll start with the personal. I turn 40 in
Wow.
2027. So, of course, a milestone birthday. And that's going to be coupled with the installation of the presidency. And that's going to kick off a really great year. I'm looking forward to a lot of advocacy, both locally and in Harrisburg, and taking that momentum to a national scale and working very closely with our educators and with our brokerages to create and foster an environment of dedicated agents, giving them a space where they can actually thrive.
That's great. And you have been so passionate about some of these missions. I've seen we've gone alongside each other at Harrisburg at the state level where we meet 3 times a year
Mhm.
with realtor agents from across Pennsylvania. We get together and we talk about all of the different legislation that is upcoming or that we're advocating for, forms changes,
Mhm.
professional standards. And I think so many people look up to you to look at that standard,
Mhm.
look at how to dress well, how to hold yourself in such a regard that you are the go-to professional in that community. And you live a lot of that work that we do at the association.
I really try to, and it's difficult, because I am a independent contractor, just like many agents.
Mhm.
I'm also a broker manager for an office, and I'm working with the association. So I wear a lot of different hats, and
Yes, you do.
I think the piece to the puzzle is that I had to learn to just be authentically myself in
Mhm,
order to reach or in order to get to where I'm at. I had to
mm,
stop emulating what I thought success looked like
mhm,
and create my own environment that I could thrive in. And as
mhm.
soon as I could thrive in my own space, then I was ready to start thriving in others.
That's great. That's great. That's sort of in line with what beyond the contract means. It's not just looking at one way to do things. It's
Mhm.
sort of zooming out and getting involved in these sort of higher level um, aspects that make a difference in our industry and pave the way for others too, not just yourself, not just looking sale to sale. What is going to serve the whole industry,
Absolutely.
right?
We have a responsibility as agents, as fiduciaries, and as leaders in our communities to create the space where buyers, sellers, and the general public feel comfortable. And as soon as they feel comfortable with what our process looks like and who we are and who they are
Mhm.
going to be um, taking steps through this transaction with,
Right.
if they know that they have a trusted individual that is dedicated not only to their community, but also to their success, you will find that your transactions move a lot smoother. That you create long-lasting friendships and relationships that can help to further your career. But you can't do it with the intention of going, if I'm really nice to this person, I'm going to get another deal out of this.
Exactly.
It's you need to really take a holistic approach, and it's not just about the house, and it's not just about the buyer. It's about the community as a whole.
Right. What are some of your favorite things to participate in at the association? And we talked a little bit about all of the different ways to get involved. And there's so many different avenues that different people can find that is their passion or where they fit in. I know we've
Mhm.
done a lot of things at YPN, which
Yeah.
is, Young Professionals Network, but it's only young at heart.
Yeah,
So
correct.
everyone is
Yeah.
welcome.
Whether you are, a young individual or you are young in the industry, YPN is for
Mhm.
you. And I think that that's an incredible place to start. That's where I got my start at a YPN event. They were doing a can drive. And
Yes, can drive for
yeah,
the
gosh,
for
this
yep.
was 10 years ago at
Oh,
least.
wow.
And that was my first venture into participating with the board. And I'm really glad that I did that. It was a place where I was allowed to kind of slow roll my involvement with the board,
Mhm.
and eventually start joining with community service events and
Mhm.
then start going to DEI meetings. And that sparked some interest in government relations meetings that
Mhm.
then sparked more conversations about taking on an actual leadership role with the association.
Mhm.
But I think everyone should, at some point throughout the year, engage with these events. They're not only educational, but it's also community building and community building with your other realtors.
Absolutely. Making a friend is so important, right?
It is.
Having someone on the other side of that transaction that knows you, and also we can learn so much from each other too. That's a big part of it. Learn from each other's experiences, not
Of
just
course.
from our own, and it sort of gives us a greater perspective.
Absolutely. There's, you know, no matter how you see yourself, you never know who's looking up to you as a potential mentor. And
Mhm.
so leaving footsteps behind that somebody can follow is really important. And so having that feedback loop, having the opportunity to just meet with other agents and discuss what you're going through. They
Mhm.
might have a perspective that can really be beneficial.
Right.
They might have a process or a tool that you did not know about before. Um, and you can't learn any of that unless you're meeting with other realtors. This is not an
Right.
insulated industry by any
Right.
means.
Right.
We can only grow together. We can only make change together, and we can only do better together.
Right. That's a great point. I will see soon we'll be up at Harrisburg and Hill Day and talking to some of our elected officials about various legislation that we advocate for as realtors.
Mhm.
I think that's an exciting time to get involved, and I know you've spoken on a lot of different interesting topics
I
there
have.
as well.
I know at the legislative feedback forums, which again happen 3 times a year. I like clockwork.
Hmm.
3 times a year, you will hear me stand up at the PAR legislative feedback panel and bring up the Fairness Act in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
And
What is that?
thankfully, the Fairness Act.
Yes.
So the Fairness Act in Pennsylvania is designed to increase protections statewide. And these protections are not only in housing, but they're also for 1099 workers.
Okay.
As most real
Interesting.
estate agents are 1099 workers, this is a really important topic for them. So, as an educator that teaches fair housing, we discuss the different protections that are granted either at the national level, at the state level, and then at the local municipality level. And being a resident of not only Allegheny County but in the city of Pittsburgh, the fair housing protections are significantly increased to include sexual orientation,
Hmm.
gender expression, um, hairstyles, also ancestry.
My goodness, all of those things.
That's correct.
Wow.
And those are not afforded on a statewide level. So if you live in Erie, Pittsburgh, or Philadelphia, you have the strongest protections as both a 1099 worker and as an LGBTQ plus individual,
Mhm.
um, especially in housing. You have expanded protection.
Mhm.
But in other parts of the state, those protections are inconsistent.
Hmm.
And, as a LGBT member of the LGBTQ community, if I were to live in the center of Pennsylvania,
Hmm.
the protections that my husband and I would have in Pittsburgh are non-existent.
Really?
And so it does kind of dictate where we live and where we
Sure.
work, because those protections are important, especially as a 1099 worker.
Sure. And I think a lot of folks maybe not don't realize that. They think that things have progressed to a point where everyone is being treated fairly. And it's thankful to you that you can advocate and educate us that there's still some ways to go with that.
Sure. And, as a realtor, we take a pledge to widen the opportunity to enjoy home ownership.
Hmm.
And if we aren't advocating for that to mean everybody,
Hmm.
then we're falling short. And the state association has taken a position that they agree that this Fairness Act is very important and does need to pass. And so we're working very closely with our legislators. As a state political coordinator, I work very specifically with the legislator.
Oh, that's great. So that
And
position means that you work directly with one of our representatives.
that's correct. And they are the representative that's in my local area.
That's great. That's another hat for you,
Yeah,
Brian.
it's another one of my jobs.
Yes.
Um, but it's great to not only see them at their home office, but also to visit with them in Harrisburg, because we have a strong connection. We're able to converse freely and openly about what this means for individuals like myself and for those that aren't there to be able to speak for themselves.
That's great. And that really does make a difference. And I think it's so important too to encourage other agents and other professionals to get involved because the more voices we have, the more change we can make,
Absolutely.
right?
I saw that while there is great representation that came before me, um, we needed more.
Hmm.
And in order for me to work on effective change, I needed a seat at the table.
Hmm.
And so I did everything I could to make sure that I could be that voice for those that didn't have that opportunity.
Well, that's great. That's great. Many years of hard work, and now you're here. It's almost here. Says your
Yeah.
president role, but still so much important work behind and after that as well.
Yeah. I'm excited to continue working. The end of my presidency doesn't mean it's the end of me working diligently.
Exactly.
I think it's just going to end up opening more doors towards, PAR director positions or NAR director positions. Um, it's work that I'll continue beyond the
That's
contract.
great. Great.
Yeah,
Perfect. Well, you're in the right place for that.
absolutely.
What else exciting are you working on these days?
Well, I've been working on the Observatory Hill House Tour
Oh,
for
that is such a cool place.
it
That
really
is
is.
in the North Hills of Pittsburgh, Observatory Hill, and there's so much history there,
There is.
so much old architecture to admire. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the tour's been around for about 30 years, and I started getting involved in 2013 when I first moved to the neighborhood. Um, I'm on my second home in the neighborhood now, but between the two homes, we've been on tour or hosted the overall after events um, 7 times.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's great. There's nothing like knowing that you're going to have 600 people walk through your front door one
Is that
day.
how many you get?
Yeah.
Wow.
My husband lovingly refers to our house as the Perrysville Event Center, because we're consistently hosting something. We're opening our doors for a charity event or a fundraiser or for a neighborhood event. We regularly host our Neighbor Fridays. But the reason why we do it is mostly because these houses have a story to tell. One of the themes for the past couple of years has been stories of a neighborhood.
Oh, how
And
lovely.
it wasn't just about the architecture. It wasn't just about the history of the home. We wanted to know the stories that you don't get to see in print.
Hmm.
And so we were able to bring a lot of those stories to light by doing a lot of research and working through city archives and old newspaper records, finding old photography, to piece together a story of the neighborhood that nobody's really heard before.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That is really neat.
I think in order to understand a neighborhood and to truly love it or understand it, you really have to kind of uncover these stories, and that's how you can really fall in love with something by truly getting to know, the root of where it's been and where it's going.
Absolutely. There's been a building in my family for many years. I've mentioned that at times we've talked before of my grandfather's
Hmm.
building and the story and the history that goes with that. My mom and I have always been fascinated about.
Hmm.
And, while we have family ties to it, it really his story really represented the traditional American dream, right? He came from Italy in 1938 with no money and just the hope of a better life in America. How
Hmm.
scary, really, that must have
Oh,
been,
absolutely.
right? And, talk about fair housing and discrimination. My goodness, there was no protections, especially for immigrants then,
Correct.
right? And how lucky we are that we've really come so far today and still with more work to do. But, he really appreciated and instilled in me the value of hard work
Hmm.
and started, I believe, renting the property for, his barber shop and then eventually saved enough money to purchase that building, and this was in the midst of the Great Depression years,
Sure.
right? People were worried about where they were gonna find dinner for the day,
Mhm.
and, he built his business, he learned the language, he studied to become an American citizen, and, really made his dreams come true as, that might sound, but it was the true American dream, and he was able to afford that and a place to raise his family, and so much so then that he built a house in the suburbs then in the 50s
Wow.
and raised his family and kept that as an investment property.
Hmm.
So, I always joke like that's how I grew up was, painting buildings and cleaning up after tenants. I
Hmm.
thought that's what all kids did on their summer
That's not
vacation,
what they all do.
but I did. And, earn my allowance money, honestly. But it was great to see, and I think being so close to someone like that, and again, tying in the history
Hmm.
of the building and the pride that they take in their building and space of not just your home, but your home for your business sometimes,
Hmm.
really really made me appreciate those things, I think, at a young age. I was an only
Absolutely.
child, so I was always dragged along to everything the adults were doing, so
Right.
I was either in or in, like, there
Yeah.
wasn't there really wasn't a choice,
But
but
those stories are important, and those stories are what
Mhm.
make that property even more special than it was just as being the property itself, right?
Exactly.
It can create a sense of connection and importance,
Right.
not only just to you and your family, but to the neighborhood as a whole. It's a part of its chapter,
Exactly, and to have that respect for the property itself and appreciation of its history or beauty,
of
that's
course.
that's so neat. Yeah. How many houses are included in the tour?
So typically, we look for anywhere between 12 and 15 homes
Okay.
to open their doors every
Oh,
year. And this year, we are going back to an old theme of the ins and outs.
okay.
And so we're going to be featuring some highlighted gardens and outdoor spaces that don't normally get featured. And it really is a pleasure to be able to work on it. And I'm very fortunate to live in a neighborhood that's just so open and welcoming
That's great.
to inviting the city of Pittsburgh through their front doors.
That's great. Did you always wanna be in real estate? What inspired you
Yeah.
to get involved professionally? As I grew up, I was, again, sort of just around it, helping out, not really thinking about it, from that professional standpoint,
Yeah.
but what inspired you?
Growing up, I moved all across the country a number of times.
Did you?
I'm originally from LA, and we moved from California to Vermont, Vermont to Arizona, Arizona to Pittsburgh. And it was all through my dad's job relocations and transfers. And so I was every couple of years going through the selling process and then the buying process. And I
My
was seeing the real
goodness.
estate agents, and I wanted to be that person. By the time college came around, the thought kind of left. Um, and I ended up at a college in California, Pepperdine. And when I realized that my pre med degree was not for me, I
Oh,
left Pepperdine and moved back to Pittsburgh and went to Duquesne. And that's when I started talking with my original broker. And I said, I'm going to drop out of college and I'm going to get my real estate license.
uh-huh.
And thankfully he said no. don't do that. Finish your degree, get a couple of years of work experience under your belt, because it really will help you understand the world just a little bit better. And when I finally went to see him 7 years after I graduated college, he said, yeah, it's time. Let's get you started.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's a lot of changes, very different cities, and also from pre-med to real estate. My
Oh, I know.
goodness. Wow.
All over the place. But I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
Sometimes I still question, what do I want to do when I grow up? But I'll,
So do
you
I.
know,
I think a lot of us do.
um, but I think what changes for me now isn't so much, is this the right industry for me? Because I think I've solidified that this is where I'm going to be for a very long time. But in what capacity am I
Mhm.
going to be the most influential
Yeah.
in this business?
Mhm.
And I think being a mentor, being a trainer, being an educator, and being the broker that agents need,
Mhm.
that's where my legacy is really going to live.
Oh, well, I would second that. You really shine in that role, and
Thank you.
you're a great leader and educator.
Thank you.
And you genuinely want to help someone do good.
I
And
do.
it's not you
Yeah.
don't you make it about them succeeding, and that's where you
Yeah.
find your joy. And I've seen that in your work, and that's incredible and inspiring.
Thanks. I I enjoy the back and forth. I enjoy just talking through a deal or through a
Mhm.
problem or through a scenario so that we can discuss the good, the bad, the ugly. If we go left, what does that mean for us? If we go up, what does that mean for us?
Yeah.
And really kind of dissecting the pitfalls before we dive into a complete decision,
Mhm.
so that we can better understand what this means not only for us but for our clients, and for the general public. How is this
Mhm.
going to affect us if we look at this holistically?
Yeah.
And I think by having those conversations with agents, even though it might seem like I'm taking a lot of time on the phone, it's extremely worth it because we've now discussed a couple of different facets of how this could potentially work, what those pitfalls are, and what the advantages are. So when they have this issue come up again, they can now rehash this conversation or have this conversation with another person that will help them to come to the same conclusion.
Mhm.
But having kind of that group think,
It's
is
great.
really what makes us successful. I don't know everything.
It's great
There's no
because
way that we
there
can.
there is not one right answer all the time. That's what makes our well, rarely, really. I mean,
Yeah.
there's many different approaches that will work. And I think I've even overheard you say on the phone to someone, call me before you make a decision so we can talk it through.
Correct.
It's much easier that
Yes.
way. And I think that's true for all of us. I think that's why we've found such great camaraderie at the association, at our committee meetings. We talk and learn, and organically sometimes those
Yeah.
conversations come up, and we learn how this broker does things, or a little quirk of the contract, how to write something a different way, or wow, this
Mhm.
really is a gap in our service. We better get on the phone with our legislators and let them know that we've had 13
Yeah.
consumer calls about this one issue. And I think that's what really shines too with your leadership, because you run your office that way, but
Mhm.
you also are sort of running your leadership perspective that way. What can I get ahead of, and how can I advocate for that?
Yeah, and that process for me didn't really come into full swing until I started working with the board.
Mm.
So when I was elected to be a board member, and I saw how the board operated.
Mhm.
I've sat on a number of other boards that weren't quite as
Mhm.
formalized as the
Right.
Realtors Association of
Oh,
Metropolitan
there
Pittsburgh
is.
is.
There's a lot of process
There's a
and
ton of process.
formality and
But that process and that formality, I think actually does lead to us coming up with the best conclusions.
Mhm.
We make a motion, right? So we make a statement and we say, I think I'm going to do X. And then somebody says, yeah, I like that idea. And so they second it.
Mhm.
But then we have the opportunity for discussion. And that discussion, I think, is where the most fun and sometimes pain, but the most fun can happen, because you end up hearing from 10 different perspectives as to what those pitfalls are, what the advantages are, and how we can amend our original statement
Yeah.
to better reflect what everybody is now saying.
Mhm.
And then the whole room gets the opportunity to vote. So I've taken that process, essentially Robert's Rules of Orders. I've taken that process and said, let's bring that closer to home. So if a seller wants to do step one, let's talk about it.
Mhm.
And let's presume that that's going to be the most logical place to go. And now let's look at some pitfalls. Let's really dissect how
Mhm.
this is going to play out and see if there's another pathway forward that arrives at the same conclusion, or if we need
Mhm.
to start over completely. I think it's a really fair way of making decisions, and it will save you a lot of time on the back end, not necessarily on the front end.
Mhm.
But messes are a lot harder to clean up once it's in writing and it's been signed.
That is true. We
Yeah.
all know that.
Yes. We've all been
But
there.
I think that's a great approach to take. I think so much sometimes of what we see is rushed, hurried, and we're all on a timeline and we have to respect that. But at the same time, taking that pause, having that one extra conversation is so important. And again, you learn from that
Yeah.
and what to discuss then at the next board meeting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone that's seen me out in public or in the wild, I probably have my phone on me and I am probably on it, actively utilizing it. But the agents that are in my office and agents that I speak to, I want them to call me first. Let's
Mhm.
have the chat, even though it's going to take longer up front. Let's talk it through. Because if I have to then clean it up in the end, it's going to take me twice as long to do that. And it's harder to backpedal than it is for us to just go a little slower before we pull the trigger on
That's
something.
that's so true. And this is again similar your approach at your advocacy work at the state level, which is so admirable that you've been able to be so outspoken and really again represent those that don't have a voice.
Mhm.
Even though we need more folks to join us,
We do need more folks to
but
join us.
but tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to, maybe in this coming month, really, right? We'll soon be in Harrisburg for our meeting, our spring meetings,
Mhm.
and that's exciting. We get to see our colleagues from across the state, and again, learn from those conversations how they do business and maybe what's working for them, what isn't working.
Absolutely. I think the collaboration that we had at the state level, especially um, for the decision that was made that changed everything on August 17th of 2024.
And what was that?
That was the Sitzer-Burnett
Mm-hmm.
and the changes to our industry
Mm-hmm.
regarding decoupling of commissions and how they can be advertised. But I think us meeting at that state level and
Mm-hmm.
bringing that information back to our local associations on best practices and how to
Mm-hmm.
process this um, was absolutely crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we were able to again have that group think about what the pitfalls are. How do we explain it? How do we talk to it? How do we talk to our clients about this change? And
Right.
how do we advertise this to the general public?
Right.
And that is really with any change that we make.
Right.
But it all starts with people getting involved and taking that step to join the meeting.
That's true. And with that, there was so much misinformation out there, and I think we combat that in many regards with many pieces of news and media, but that was a big one. And I think there's still a lot of misinformation to get around or get the message out there of what's actually happening, what, realtors do for you,
Mhm.
and the value in having a seasoned professional who, like yourself, takes the time out of your already busy schedule as a volunteer to talk to your elected officials in Harrisburg, in Washington, D.C.,
Mhm.
and participate in these association level work on the state, local, and national level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And engaging with the political coordinators that we have on the state level are unbelievable. And the work that the PAR staff does, but even down to the work that our local, um,
Our association
our,
at
our
the
local,
Pittsburgh level.
yeah, even down to the
Yeah.
Pittsburgh level with Matthew and the Government Relations Committee,
Mhm.
the work that we're doing here is next level. Um,
Mhm.
the wholesale bill was originated out of our association,
Mhm.
the
And what is the wholesale
municipalities.
bill? The wholesale bill was introduced to ultimately protect consumers.
Correct.
right?
If
Where
you're working in the real estate space,
mhm,
then you should be licensed as a real estate practitioner
mhm,
with the Real Estate Commission.
mhm,
And there were loopholes and
mhm.
backdoors. And
Yeah.
essentially, all this bill did was to close those backdoors and
Mhm,
require that if you were working in the real estate world, that you are following by the rules established by the Real Estate Commission.
mhm.
Um,
And a lot of predatory wholesaling is what we were seeing at the
correct.
association or on the other end of the transaction. Um, People being taken advantage of
Mhm,
that were getting into transactions that they weren't understanding, they weren't explained properly, and that makes a bad name for everyone who is a well studied and honest professional. And I think that was a really important. It took many years, and again, now that it is even enacted, there are still loopholes to combat. We see that, but I think that made great strides to uh, our industry, and again, protecting the consumer. Right. I think
absolutely.
realtors sometimes get a bad rap that we are, just after sale to sale. And there are so many of us that are not, that are volunteering our time to work on a higher level to protect our consumers, right?
Mhm.
That is one of the taglines of our association. One of the mission is to protect private property rights and, enjoy the opportunity for someone, support the opportunity for someone to enjoy having that land, like, again, so many of our ancestors did, and
Mhm.
what the American dream is built on,
Right,
right?
which is home ownership
Right.
and the ability to enjoy it. And, we have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients.
Hmm.
But beyond that, and beyond that contract, we have a responsibility and we owe the general public honesty, fair dealing, and disclosure.
Hmm.
And those three things were missing from the piece of the puzzle that, the
Hmm.
wholesaling side
Hmm.
was doing as for the most part.
Hmm.
There's an ethical way to do that. It's called a net listing. There's ways that this can be done,
Hmm.
but the fair dealing is really the crux of it.
Hmm.
And they weren't being honest and they weren't dealing
No,
fairly.
we were finding out there were two settlement sheets. We were
Mhm.
finding out that the net profit was hundreds, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars different than what the actual seller was getting. And really a sad story. I mean,
Yeah,
people work their whole lives to afford their home, and the especially vulnerable populations like the elderly or otherwise incapacitated, or you don't have a family, or you don't know what resources are available to you. The association is available to consumers and members
absolutely.
as realtors, and we want to protect that and elevate those standards. So you're right, the wholesaling bill was a great achievement.
Yeah,
And
and all of that takes a lot of work, and that
mhm,
means all of the associations from across the state meeting with their individual representatives, and then
mhm,
us descending upon Harrisburg to
mhm,
further drive the point, and that took years.
mhm.
Nothing that an organization this large does happens quickly,
No.
but it has to take that time because we need to do it expertly and we need
Mhm,
to do it carefully
mhm.
because we're not just doing it for ourselves; we're
Right.
doing it to protect our clients and our potential consumers. And I'm glad that we are able to have this kind of force in the industry.
Mhm.
Um, I just wish we could move a little faster, but I
Sure.
understand why we can't because we have to be extra, extra careful.
Right. And having those conversations, I mean, we get the opportunity to do that once. We have a short amount of time, but we do get to sit down face to face with our elected officials and talk to them about what's important. Talk to them about their base of consumers as well, and what they're experiencing, and how we can make that better. We were talking earlier about sometimes how frustrating it can be hearing so much misinformation in the news, particularly about some of the changes that arose out of the lawsuit last year, and what is required for that buyer agency agent agreement, and what that all means to consumers, and what really in Pennsylvania particularly has changed and has not. What have you been seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. So The news that we're getting, or at least the news that our consumers are seeing, is coming from mostly national sources or
Mm.
from national TikTok accounts or Instagram accounts, Facebook accounts, w-
Self-appointed experts
self-appointed
sometimes.
experts. But listen, for 90% of their content, I mean, they're spot on.
Mhm.
But you have to understand where they're coming from. And if they aren't coming from Pennsylvania,
Mm.
then you may need to rethink the information that you take away from
That's a
them.
very good point.
Pennsylvania has had buyer agency since the 90s.
Mm.
This isn't a crisis. This is just a clarification of when
Mm.
we're supposed to have that conversation.
Mhm.
Other states are struggling because they did not have buyer agency.
What exactly is buyer agency, Brian, for someone that's maybe new to the process?
Absolutely. So, buyer agency is when you are working directly with an agent as your buyer representative.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, this is somebody that you would meet at an open house and
Mhm.
decide that you want to work with that particular agent.
Mhm.
When you're referred to a friend
Mhm.
that wants to work as your agent, that potentially could be buyer agency, but they are
Mhm.
working directly with you, the consumer that is looking to purchase a property.
Mhm.
All that's changed is when we have this conversation. And
Mm.
so instead of having it um, when we're submitting an offer, we're
Mm.
having this conversation before we have any substantive conversations about your financing, the house, its condition, anything of that sort.
Right, so it's sort of common sense practice if you are educating a consumer, particularly a first-time home buyer or a first-time investor, and even just everyone needs a refresher, right? They're not
Absolutely.
they're not in it every day like we are, and it helps to talk about everything up front and your exclusive relationship, and also a lot of the fees and costs involved.
Right. I mean, what's
Uh,
the term? Define the relationship, right?
right,
It's basically just that. We're
right.
defining the terms at which we are going to work together. That way, everyone is on the same page
Hmm.
about what the fees are, what the term is, and how this relationship is going to look moving forward.
Hmm.
So now you'll see that reflected in probably a buyer consultation that happens,
Hmm.
where you review all of the documentation and all of the
Hmm.
forms. But again, this doesn't have to be a crisis. This is just a
Right,
repositioning of when that conversation happens.
right.
Not much else changed other than we can't advertise our potential seller paid compensation.
Hmm.
Um, that's it.
Yeah, that's been taken away from the consumer visibility
Correct.
in an effort to keep their interest, primary,
Mhm.
and that sort of a secondary conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think it's great having all that up front and any questions, as there's so many questions along the process too. But as much as you can get out of the way up front, I think
Mhm.
is definitely not only the law, but also best practice. Like like you're saying, not really too much change legally in
No, like I
Pennsylvania.
said, the
So
Commonwealth has had buyer agency since the 90s. So
mhm,
again, it not much has really changed.
yeah.
But if you do have questions, talk to a realtor, call the Realtor Association.
Hmm.
There's consumer um, resources available to you through the National Association of Realtors, Pennsylvania Association, as
Yep.
well as our local association.
Yeah, there's a lot of great information, a lot of friendly faces at particularly our Pittsburgh
Of course.
Association, which I can speak firsthand for.
Mhm.
But right, the National Association puts a lot out as well, a lot of great content.
And ultimately, this helps to protect the agents as well. That we
Yeah.
have a defined relationship with a consumer,
Hmm.
protecting the amount of work that we put in, even prior to you having an offer accepted or prior to a deal closing.
Right.
I think the general public forgets that for the vast majority of us, we do all of the work before ever getting paid. And so if that deal does not close, there's no income for us.
Right.
And by having very clear, defined roles
Right.
and a defined relationship, it makes everyone more successful to bringing it to that closing table.
Absolutely. That's such a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm noticing too, we're hearing that a lot of buyers, perhaps after you've found your agent and had this very important conversation, that housing, even in Pittsburgh, which is always touted as affordable city living,
Mhm.
is becoming a challenge. Are you seeing that too?
I am seeing that. I'm a city resident. I live in the north side of Pittsburgh,
Hmm.
and I have for the last 20 years, and I love it. Um, but I've, of course, seen the housing stock increase significantly in price due
Hmm.
to demand. We have decades of a very slow progress when it comes to building. And I'm excited to say that we're working very closely with the new mayor's office
Hmm.
to remove some of that red tape, remove some of the hurdles um, in the building process.
Hmm.
Um, Not only do we have a vast stock of properties that are vacant, that had bad tax bills, that are just sitting there waiting for redevelopment,
Hmm.
but we also have a vast number of lots that are buildable. The problem is that the permitting process
Hmm.
and the approvals process to redevelop that land is
Hmm.
just covered in red tape
Hmm.
that even if you wanted to start a project today, you're not breaking ground for another 2 years.
My goodness, is
And
it
that's
really
a
that
huge
long?
investment of time and money for somebody to basically plan for the future.
Right.
But a 2 year long project with still another year build out, and that's 3 years. Even if we got started today, it's not going to fix itself overnight. Um,
No, and that's why I think we see so many builders and developers going outside of the city limits,
Absolutely. And
right?
and we have such great assets here in the city
Hmm.
that if we just removed some of those barriers, I think we could see a lot of progress very quickly. Even for myself, I live in a 1904 Victorian home, and behind it sits a carriage home that was built in 1879.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
It's a 2 story. There's a 1 bedroom apartment on the second floor. Um, there's it's where the neighborhood came to vote for almost 60 years.
My
Um,
goodness, really?
yeah, but
That's
all of the
cool.
records for that building were from Allegheny City before it was combined with the city of Pittsburgh. So when I go to try and pull permits for this property, those documents don't live with the city of Pittsburgh anymore. They're in the old Allegheny City archives. So when
Wow.
I went to file a permit to have the carriage house redone, they wanted new construction permits. They wanted a curb cut permit. There was a lot of red tape to jump through, even though a carriage had been pulled out of that property with no curb cut since 1879. Um, so there's a lot of hurdles that even for somebody reconstructing a property that is currently there on their own site, even that has red tape.
Wow. Wow. Well, hopefully, like you mentioned, the mayor's office and their team are very involved to listening to a lot of these issues and making changes along the way to encourage developers. We have
Mhm.
so much beautiful land and opportunity in the city that needs attention
Of
and
course.
needs development.
And with an aging population, with we're tech eds, meds, all of those fun terms, um, they're buying property that also has space available on it for accessory dwelling units or ADUs.
Mhm.
And as of right now, the city of Pittsburgh doesn't recognize an accessory dwelling unit.
Interesting.
And that's something that, as our parents' generation starts to age,
Mhm.
that really needs to become part of the equation. Um,
It's a huge,
where they're going
huge
to be able
factor.
to move on site with me, or presumably we would be able to move on site with them,
Mhm.
to consolidate households, but also make that familial tie just a little bit stronger.
Sure.
But that's another red tape nightmare that we just can't seem to get through
Wow.
because the city has not yet defined ADU and
Interesting.
approved their use. But there are so many carriage homes all throughout town that could be reconverted and used, as additional dwelling units
Mm.
for the owners that are currently there, perhaps helping them to make extra rental income,
Mhm.
affordable rental units,
Mhm.
or provide a space for either their aging parents or younger children to
Right.
occupy.
Right. And so many other countries, I think, have that as part of their tradition, right? It's
Oh,
almost
absolutely.
more unusual that all the families are separated. And I think that probably drives home a bigger issue of
Mhm.
just, values and principles of the modern day,
Yeah.
right? Valuing what's important. It is your family. It's taking care of each other
Mhm.
when you need to, and housing should facilitate that.
Absolutely. Or at least it should be easier to be able to facilitate it.
Hmm.
If you go south or southwest, you'll see a lot of homes labeled as next gen, where they
Mm.
have a small casita on site, or
Mhm.
the space where the garage would normally be is actually a legal apartment,
Mm.
and the garage gets placed somewhere else on the property. There's a way to do it. We just
Yeah.
have to define it
Yeah.
and have the city pass it.
That's great. Well, you'll have to report back once you get a little further along in the process,
I
maybe
certainly will.
after some tears and laughs, hopefully somewhere along there you'll tell us how it went, and be right in the perfect position to advocate for the changes needed after you've lived through this experience yourself.
I can't wait to be a shining example for how well it works
Good.
once we can get there.
We can hope you can be the poster
Yeah,
boy for that.
one day.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Brian. It was great to hear about all the work you're doing and all of the changes you're so dedicated and inspired to make.
Of course, thank
Do you
you.
ever sleep, or no, you're just a lot of
Very little.
coffee or
It's a lot of coffee a lot of the time.
That's
Even,
great.
but I appreciate you having this channel
Yeah.
and bringing to light not only the great work that our individual members, realtors, and associations do, but showing the world that realtors are a special group of people
Yes.
dedicated to seeing you succeed.
Yeah, there are a lot of us that care well beyond the contract. And I've been so lucky to make so many great friends at the association as well. So I'm lucky to have your friendship and your support professionally also. So
Likewise.
it's been great, and we'll see you soon at the
Looking
next
forward to
board
it.
meeting or one of these many meetings that we're at.
Can't wait.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.